talking about system interconnection. You've seen how an ISA document looks like. You've seen how an MOU looks like. You know how a DUA looks like, and a BA. And we'll talk more about BA and DUA when we get to HIPAA, or when you watch our HIPAA video. Now, because we have talked about system interconnection, we want to talk about a standalone system. Who is ready to define a standalone system? A standalone system means a standalone system. It's a system that is operating independently and it's not connected to a network. That is why we call it a standalone, because it's standing alone. Majority of the time, this is the most safest system because it's not connected to the internet or any system and it's standing by itself. It's hard for it to be affected by any virus or by any hacker or by any malware. And so we call it a standalone system. That is what mostly we are using for our various backups. Now let's go into other things and some of the other terminologies. Before we talked about assets, so we're not going to go over it again, but we talk about vulnerability. You heard me previously when I was defining risk. I said that risk can be defined as what? You don't remember? Let me tell you about it. It's the potential that a threat will take advantage of a vulnerability to harm a system. Now, what is this vulnerability? Vulnerability is just weaknesses or gaps that are within our environment. So weaknesses or gaps within a security program that can be exploited by a threat to gain unauthorized access to our assets. And so when we talk about weaknesses or gaps, that is what vulnerabilities are. I'm sure now you know what vulnerability is. Now let's go ahead. Probability. Probability is just the likelihood of something happening. But with cybersecurity, when we are defining probability, we'll say that the likelihood that a vulnerability will be exploited. Now, it could be a low, moderate, or high. Now, when you think about probability, vulnerability, you see there's one other thing that comes into mind, and that is what we call a threat. What is a threat? A threat is anything or any event that can exploit a vulnerability intentionally or accidentally to gain, to obtain, or to get, or to damage or destroy an asset. Remember that our assets are our valuable goods. That is our people, the data, the information, the properties. The vulnerabilities are the gaps and the loopholes within the assets. Now, the threats are anything that can harm these assets. And so we are saying that for us as cybersecurity people, a threat is what we are protecting ourselves against. All right. Now, let me give you a simple analogy that I learned when I started cybersecurity. Now, I was being told that, you see, you live by a river. Now, you have a house and your house is close to the river. Because your house is close to the river, you figure out that it's very likely the house can be flooded. And so what you do is that you raise a wall. As you raise the wall, you had a guy in your house who is always pinching holes in your walls. So now you have holes that have been drilled into your walls. Now, because you were protecting yourself against that river, you lifted up the wall. But there are still holes in your wall that the water can pass through the holes to come into your house. And so what do? Now you apply patches so that you'll be able to seal those loopholes in your wall. Your asset is your house. Your goal is to protect your assets. The river is a threat that is trying to harm your assets. Your controls or your safeguards or your measures to protect your house is the wall that you lifted up. But those holes in your wall becomes your vulnerability. And so the water can pass through. So what do? You apply extra controls to be able to seal all those loopholes. Why? Because you don't want the water from the river to be able to have access into your house and flood your house. So your threat is the water. Your vulnerabilities are the holes that are within your wall. Your walls are your controls, and your assets becomes your house. I hope that analogy makes so much sense to you. Thank you. I'll see you in the other class. Before I go, remember that whenever there is a threat, there is something that we call a risk that is involved. And every risk has an impact. The impact is the estimate of the harm that could be caused by a threat. And we have qualitative and we have quantitative. We'll talk about more when we get to risk management.